Hi, I'm Dr. Russ, and this is Unit 12, How Good is My Paper? When you were working on the introduction, body, and conclusion, we said you were just drafting the paper. The idea was to get everything that you need for your paper written. You weren't going to worry about how well you said it, getting spelling right, or anything else. You just wanted to be writing, writing, writing. So now you've got it all written. How will you make sure it's good? In this unit, we'll learn how to do that. In this video, we're going to learn about reviewing and revising a paper. First, we'll learn how to get another classmate to peer review your paper. Then we'll learn about how you can do a peer review on a classmate's paper. And we'll learn how to use the feedback you get from your classmate. We'll also learn how to self-review your own paper. And you can also apply the using feedback skills there. Finally, we'll look at the assignment for this week. The goal for this week is on your own to review and evaluate the paper to identify needed changes. So let's learn about reviewing and revising the paper. Last week, you finished the draft stage, and now we're starting the revise stage. The first part of the revise stage involves doing a peer review of your paper, which is done by another classmate, and a self-review, which you do yourself. So let's learn how to do a peer review. Peer reviewing means having a classmate read your work and giving you feedback. What's feedback? Feedback is detailed information from your reader about how well you communicated with them. Remember, the purpose of academic writing is to communicate with anyone, anywhere who speaks your language. So this is like a test. How well did I communicate with my reader? And you're going to have a reader that's going to answer that question. Getting feedback about how well you communicated to your classmate is an effective way to improve your paper. So why do a peer review? When you ask another student to review your paper, it's going to give you certain benefits. But you're also going to get benefits when you read another student's paper. So when you're a writer and you ask another classmate to review your paper, it allows you to ask questions about your writing and to get answers back. It provides a different perspective on your writing. And it gives you the opportunity to learn from a classmate. All these things help you to clarify your ideas. When you read another classmate's paper, it allows you to see how another student responded to the same assignment. And it gives you the opportunity to show what you understand about the assignment and writing in general when you give feedback to that student. And it may help you clarify your own ideas further. So when you're getting ready to ask another student to review your paper, take some time and write some instructions for them. You have the right to ask for the kind of feedback you want. So tell your classmate how you would like them to review the draft. For example, you could tell them what specific parts of the assignment were challenging for you and ask them to look at that closely. You could tell them what you're not sure about and ask them for ideas. Or in general, you could ask them for a second opinion on some part of the paper that you'd like to know how another person saw it. All this information you'll write down in soft copy instructions for your classmate. In the assignment, one of your classmates is also going to ask you to peer review their paper. Let's see how that's done. First, you want to read your classmate's paper all the way through once without marking anything. The idea is to concentrate on what they're saying and to get an overall understanding of their paper. Then you can go through the paper again and respond to them by noting what works, what is confusing, and what needs more support. It's important to criticize the paper and not the writer of the paper. So use I statements instead of you statements. Don't write things like, you aren't clear in this paragraph, because that really accuses the writer of being sloppy. Rather, say, I'm confused in this paragraph. Did you mean X or Y? Write questions instead of comments. Use questions to clarify what the writer means, what the resources given are saying, and what the writer is trying to do. You can also ask questions to help the writer think more deeply about the topic, provide needed evidence, and to make the language clear. Be specific. Don't say, I liked it or it was good, unless you explain exactly what you liked or what you thought was good. Don't say, it was confusing or I don't understand, unless you explain exactly what confused you or what was missing. Remember, we've been talking about when you make a claim, you need to support it with evidence. And that's true when you're giving feedback too. So let's look at some of the do's and do nots of review. When you're being a peer reviewer and you're looking at another student's paper, do follow the writer's instructions. Do be kind and respectful when you're giving feedback. Give advice based upon your own experience. For example, if this were my paper, the two things I would do next are A and B. Or if you want to expand this, you could do A, B, or C. And do encourage the writer by identifying things they did well. People don't want to hear all bad news, they want to hear good news too. Here's some things you should not do when you're reviewing a classmate's paper. Do not try to make the writer sound like you. They aren't you and they have a different writing style. Sure, if the writer uses the wrong word, tell them, but avoid telling the writer to use a word that you like better. Also, do not edit your peers' writing for them. Your job is only to give feedback. Editing will be done by the writer themselves in the next stage. When you get feedback from your classmate, here's how to use it. Let's review one more time. The purpose of academic writing is to communicate with anyone, anywhere who speaks your language. Feedback is detailed information from your reviewer about your communication. How well did you do? Your reader is telling you, in their role as a reader, what works, what is confusing to them, and what needs more support. It's important to have the right attitude about feedback. Remember, your reviewer is on your side. They're trying to help you communicate better. That means that feedback is a gift. And like all gifts, you should receive feedback with thanks and humility. So, how do you use the feedback once you get it? Use the feedback to decide where you need to change, add, or delete paragraphs in your paper. Feedback is advice, not directions. That means you get to decide what feedback to accept and which feedback you're not going to use. If you don't think the feedback is correct, ask your instructor or lab assistant what they think. If you have questions or need clarification about feedback or comments, try to ask the reviewer right away while the feedback is still fresh in their mind. And make notes so that you remember what the feedback means. Now let's learn how to review the paper yourself. So, how do I do a self-review? Making your paper right is your responsibility. It's not the responsibility of your instructor, your lab assistant, or your classmate. You must always do a self-review, even if you do not have a peer review. So when reviewing your own paper, think about the topic. What am I writing about? The purpose. Why am I writing about this topic? The audience. For whom am I writing? Who's going to read my paper? Culture. What is the background of the people for whom I am writing? So when you're doing the self-review, here's some questions to ask yourself about the topic. You want to be sure that your topic and thesis focus on your position and omit any extra material you may have put in the paper. Ask yourself, what is the general scope of my topic? What is my thesis? Does my thesis focus on my topic? Does my thesis clearly state my position? Here are some questions to consider when you're thinking about your purpose. It is often easier to locate your purpose or a lack of purpose after you have written a draft or two. What do I hope to accomplish in this writing about my topic? Do all parts of the paper advance this purpose? Does my paper focus on my argument or position? When thinking about your audience, make sure that your paper is aimed accurately at your readers. Some questions to ask yourself are, what does my audience know about this subject? What does my audience need to know or understand about the point of my paper? What questions or objections do I anticipate from my audience? When thinking about culture, your paper should reflect consideration of cultural differences, if any, between you and your audience. What is the culture of the people for whom I am writing? Do all readers share the same culture? How do my beliefs, values, and customs differ from those of my audience? How do the cultures of the authors of sources I cite differ from my culture? or the cultures of my audience. Now let's look at the assignment for this week. In this assignment, you're going to demonstrate two things. One, that you can perform a self-review, and two, that you can conduct a peer review and document the feedback. First of all, you need to put your paper together. Get a copy of the APA template from Moodle. Open that template and add information such as the paper title and your name. Then paste these parts into your copy of the template and save the file. You want to paste the introduction, the body, the conclusion, and the bibliography, which you've all created already. Then get ready to do the reviews. Review any feedback that your instructor or lab assistant gave you in the earlier units for the introduction, body, conclusion, and bibliography. Then make any revisions to your paper based on that feedback that you want to follow. And remember, during the revision stage, you're only adding, deleting, or rearranging content. You're not fixing spelling errors or grammar errors or punctuation or things like that. Tell the reader what you want page of the Unit 12 video or notes. And think about what you need a classmate to do for you when they read your paper. Create a soft copy document called the peer review form, and then type the 3 or 4 questions or 3 or 4 directions for the reviewer into it. Then ask a classmate to peer review your paper. Consider offering to peer review their paper too. This would be a great way to appreciate the work they're going to do for you. Then give the classmate a copy of your paper and the peer review form. Ask the classmate to read your paper and then to give you written soft copy feedback. If you are a peer reviewer who's reviewing a classmate's paper, review the Being a Peer Review section of the Unit 12 video or notes. This will help you give good feedback to the writer. Give your feedback to the classmate in a soft copy document. Also, do the self-review. Review the self-reviewing and revising section in the Unit 12 videos or notes. Then do a self-review of your paper. Identify at least 5 improvements that your draft needs. And write down the feedback to yourself in a soft copy document. Then create a new document and put your name at the top. Put all 3 soft copies into this document. Put the peer review form, the peer review feedback, and the self-review feedback all into the document. Make sure that the 3 soft copies are clearly labeled in the document so your instructor can tell what they are, and submit the document to your instructor. How will we evaluate all this activity? First, the assignment should have a soft copy of the peer review form with the 3 or 4 questions or 3 or 4 directions for the reviewer in it. It should also include the soft copy feedback that you got from a classmate about the draft. And it should include the soft copy that you wrote to yourself with at least 5 improvements that the draft needs. And as always, your assignment needs to be submitted on time. If you have any questions, ask your lab assistant or instructor.